Hey guys, it's Andy. It's time to take a look at the first of the tons and tons of new merch that's been being released like crazy lately. Seems like we're gonna have a very exciting next few months of new merch. Today we're gonna be taking a look at something completely new that Funko's been cooking up, called Hero World. Which is actually pretty hilarious because I don't think heroes kill innocent night guards, nor are they generally serial killers. So yeah, Funko went with a sort of basic name for these new style figures that doesn't exactly fit for all the series they're using. I mean, for the most part they are making them actual heroes, but then again you have sets like these. I don't think the Joker or Lex Luthor have ever been considered heroes. Now you may notice the Only at Target sticker. This set isn't exclusive. All of them are. All of the Hero World sets can only be found at Target, and as of making this video there are 5 different series of them, or so they're called. It may be a bit strange picking up the Five Nights at Freddy's ones and seeing that it says Series 2. Did you miss the first one? No, actually the first one is all about DC heroes, and some villains. So it doesn't really have to do with the franchise with these Hero World sets, it's just about Hero World itself. And of course on this channel I'll probably only be reviewing the Five Nights at Freddy's ones, if there does happen to be more in the future. So with that confusing bit of info explained, we can finally move on and actually review these figures. First off, I have to say, the main series box is really cool. It looks like a mini display case, not packaging. And the way they're set up alongside each other makes it look even more like a display, with the back row slightly higher up than the front and the sides turned outward. Talk about fancy. Sadly, the 2 smaller sets are more normal, but that's understandable. Funko's always quite good about packaging their merch in a way that comes across the least cheesy way they possibly can. I'm actually gonna feel a little bit bad tearing this guy open, but I gotta do what I gotta do. So yes, we will be starting with the main set to kick off this review. You can't buy the figures individually, but if you could, each one would cost about $3.50, which is much cheaper than mystery minis, which go for around an average of $7 a piece depending on what store you buy them from. Now that price difference may sound quite shocking, and I felt the same way at first. But really the Hero World figures are cheaper in more ways than just their price. Mystery minis have always been quite good about their paint. More scuffs and mistakes are found on the action figures than the minis. Plus they're very detailed. Now I don't think that makes them worth $8 each, but I do think the Walmart price of $6 is very fair. And this is also probably why the Hero World figures are decently priced. They aren't being sold at overpriced stores like Hot Topic, they're being sold at Target, which has generally better prices. Plus, unlike mystery minis, these guys are prone to paint mistakes and more obvious seams. So although there's a big difference in price, when considering buying one of these versus the minis, it's more about which ones you prefer, because they're both decently priced for what they are. And of course, since the action figures are kind of in their own league, I won't be comparing them to these Hero World figures. If you want to know what I think, action figures all the way. Now let's take a closer look at each of these new figures, our so-called heroes, starting with our main man, Freddy. The first thing you may notice about these figures are their obscenely long legs. You may even compare them to anime legs. Actually, no. I guess he's not that bad, although Chica might be. Okay, I'll try to get a hold of myself here. One at a time, Andy. I know it's hard to peel your eyes away from that creature, but you just gotta. Back to Freddy. The Freddy figure is really reminiscent of the Freddy Dangler to me, one of the few danglers I didn't actually hate. It kind of looks like he was attempting the same jump scare-like pose, but it doesn't look intimidating at all. It's probably his limp noodle-like arms and tiny torso. And his face also just looks a bit goofy, like an angry bulldog. I understand they wanted to make him still look like the animatronic he is, but Freddy's cheeks stop at the end of his snout. They don't flop down like that. And once again, like his action figure counterpart, Funko gave his hat a weird black ribbon, almost like they planned on making Toy Freddy. Funko, why do you keep doing this? I do think this is a well-made figure, but I just don't think this is the kind of style figure I personally would want to collect. It has goofy proportions and slightly derpy looking faces. I'm not saying they're terrible, not at all. They just don't stand out as great compared to the amazing stuff we currently have. But I'm not going to make any conclusions just yet. Let's move on to the next character. Bonnie, the guitar-wielding bunny. Now this guy doesn't actually look as terribly proportioned. But look again. It's just his guitar giving you that illusion. He still has that M&M-sized torso. Despite how these figures are slightly cheesy, Bonnie's guitar actually looks exactly like the action figures one. Maybe they just straight up resized it. And unlike Freddy, I actually really like Bonnie's pose here. He looks really epic. Something I didn't point out with Freddy was the elbow pads. Now, as we know, the FNaF 1 characters do have knee pads, but they don't have elbow pads. Nonetheless, I actually like the addition on these figures. Sometimes stylistic changes are awesome. Other times, well, I guess it depends on your preferences? As for Bonnie's face, it's also a bit off like Freddy's was. This time, instead of giving him bulldog flappy flaps, his jaw has shrunk, giving him an almost one-up shaped face. I will admit, this kind of bothers me. Even looking at his profile, it's shortened there too, giving him a major overbite. Bonnie has always had a very prominent jaw, so it's just weird to see him like this. I mean, at the very least, they didn't give him upper teeth like the action figures. As for Bonnie's ears, once again the designers took some liberties and made him look a bit more like a different bunny character, because the FNaF 1 Bonnie has always had ears that stood straight up on his head. So yeah, this Bonnie is a bit off overall, but he's not bad, especially for the decent price. Next up, you guessed it, Chica, the Elastigirl of Freddy's band of superheroes. Seriously, I cannot get over these legs. Okay, well let's at least try to talk about the positives of them. For one, the coloring is on point and looks fantastic. Although I'm not positive about those metallic toes. I remember back when I reviewed the action figures and pointed them out, I got a ton of comments saying I was wrong. Excuse me? Look at them toes. Those are some yellow toes! Although, I did find this one screenshot where they appear white, for some reason. Either way, I don't think they're metallic. They're either yellow or white, whatever you believe. I'm still biased and consider them yellow. As for Chica's pose, I'm not really a fan. First of all, really? Cupcake in the right hand? It belongs in the left! Funko, when will you learn? Even the cupcake is offended you forgot. Look at that demonic little face. And oh boy, look at Chica's face. She has straight up got nightmare teeth. I'm not sure why they did that, but I guess I'm not too surprised. The rest of these figures' teeth have been a bit weird too, although not exactly nightmarish. Also, something that took a while to notice are all their black eyes. So far, all of the figures have had just plain black eyes, which is understandable since they're quite small, but at the same time, Chica's bib is tiny but looks perfect. So I bet they could have colored them if they had wanted to. Chica's face actually looks quite a bit more normal compared to the other figures, though I do think it looks like she got a haircut. Who else is in the mood for chicken? Now it's time for our fourth figure of this set. Foxy! Holy crap, okay, I like this guy. Foxy is looking great. He's got a very nice pose going on, showing off the hook he uses to mangle night guards. The metallic parts are very shiny and vibrant. It really adds a lot to this figure, and the segmented legs and fingers. I didn't really expect this level of detail out of these figures. I'm impressed! As for Foxy's head, it's pretty accurate. It seems like they did completely forget his tuft of fur on his head though, and the lighter color on him is way too light. It kind of throws off his color scheme a bit. But all in all, I do like this figure. Weirdly, looking at these figures standing side by side, they look much better than individually. So it's nice they're sold in packs. So far, I have to say, Foxy is definitely my favorite of the group. Although that might be changing, since next up is my favorite character, Springtrap. Boom! The adorably evil, rotting, fluffy bunny murderer, Springtrap. Okay, I think I'm liking this figure as well. Usually with Springtrap merch, he always looks off in various ways. He has a very distinct head shape and smile, which with only minor adjustments make him look completely off. Like for instance, the action figure that makes him look bored, the plushie that made him look more like Scraptrap, and the mystery mini that, well, made him look like a cheetah? This figure, on the other hand, actually got his head shape nearly spot on. I gotta say, this is probably my most favorite Springtrap head to date. I still think the action figure made his body much better, obviously, but this guy's head is just perfect. I also love his pose here. It's not perfect for a realistic Springy, but it's perfect for this style. And the look at those awesome metallic legs showing through, with a slightly darker color than Foxy's. The red rusty looking color is also quite perfect, although it's a bit sloppily applied. I feel like my brain is starting to see these tiny bodies and huge legs as being normal the more I stare at them. I wonder if that's what happened to the designer. Yep, this is completely normal. Sadly, they did seem to forget to color the inside of his ears and middle torso piece. They colored his nose, but not the rest. Despite the mistakes, I'm just really impressed with this figure. Seems the further I get into reviewing these guys, the happier I am. Hopefully the next set can continue the trend. Next up, the two Nightmares, starting with Nightmare Freddy. Seriously, what is with the lack of Nightmare Fredbear merch? He's so cool! Oh, whatever, let's take a look. Okay, wow, this is very interesting. The color of Freddy here is almost not even brown. It's like a very warm gray. Really weird, since Nightmare Freddy is a rich brown color. And immediately my first thought about this figure was, what is that pose? To me, he looks like he's reaching out for a hug. Or he's blindly walking in the dark, trying to make sure he won't run into a wall. I mean, it's not that bad, it just looks a bit off to me. But I mean, other than the weird coloring and the slightly off-looking pose, I have to say this is a fantastic figure. His head looks just about perfect, his teeth are giant and intimidating, and the details on him are fantastic. And now for the best part of this figure, the Freddles! Seriously cool, I never actually expected any of his merch to have these guys coming out of his body. It's really awesome to see, I'm so happy someone finally did it. Although I wouldn't look too close, because it becomes a bit goofy looking when you realize they just glued on their little heads. Overall, I like this figure. It's great! Oh, and by the way, check this out. It's like these two were made specifically to fight each other. Or romantically hold hands. Now let's take a look at Nightmare Foxy. Looking pretty good. The first thing I noticed was his slightly crooked jaw, which I don't think was done on purpose, so it kind of bothers me. But I'm definitely impressed with his head in general. It's very detailed and accurate. If you look at him from behind, it kind of looks like he has an Ennard endoskeleton. Wrong game, buddy. And once again, maybe it's just me, I just think his pose is slightly strange. Some of these figures have amazing and perfect poses, and the rest just seem slightly off. Just like Foxy and Springtrap, Nightmare Foxy has those awesome looking metallic legs, this time being slightly lighter than Foxy's. I really appreciate the color gradient, and altogether I appreciate this figure in general. It's very nice for what it is. One thing I haven't mentioned so far are the bases these figures are on. They're not removable, which makes sense as they seem mainly there only to help these guys stand, especially since some of them have poses with part of their foot not flat on the ground. I am a bit sad these are there though. I mean, with feet the size of these, I'd think they could probably stand without the bases, especially if their poses were slightly adjusted. I've never really been a huge fan of bases. I don't mind them, but I prefer without. Although at the same time, bases are useful for kids who want to play with their figures on things like carpet or grass. The action figures have a really hard time doing that. And at least the bases aren't those clear plastic ones so many figures have. Those things just look so cheesy to me, I can't stand them. And now let's open up our last set, Glow Freddy and Glow Foxy. Oh boy, you guys know how I feel about glowing figures. They're not really my thing, but I'll try to keep an open mind. First off, let's look at Glow Freddy. Now this isn't as bland as most glow figures, where they're colored nearly identically to their non-glowing counterpart. This guy on the other hand will actually look unique in your collection, other than only being unique in the dark. And one neat thing about Freddy is how he's colored bright green. He can definitely be considered his own character because, believe it or not, there is a lime green Freddy character, this being Virtua Freddy. Now that this connection has been made, I actually like this figure a lot more. He's an actual character who has an actual name. He's not a Funko-made recolor. I know the box won't exactly say Virtua Freddy, but does it look like I care? Nope. So even though this figure is an exact replica, despite the different color, I'm okay with this. In fact, I'm better than okay. I approve of this. So by now I usually test how well the figure glows, but we'll wait on that. We'll see how both of the glowing figures do compared to each other. Now for our last figure, Glow Foxy. Whoa. Okay, now this figure actually looks really weird. The base of his hook is the same color as his fur. Some of the black spots on his pants are very light salmon, and his legs are, well, weird. It's sort of sad he isn't like Virtua Freddy, being bright lime green. Instead, he just looks like a really weirdly colored Foxy. In fact, after this video, I doubt I'll be displaying this figure just because it looks like a screwed up regular Foxy. I mean, even if this figure glows amazingly, it will still look strange in the light, which is generally when I view these collections. In the dark, I usually go to bed, end of story. It's kind of like how I made my Springtrap mask. I wanted him to have glow-in-the-dark teeth because I figured, why not? But if that forced me to paint them lime green or any other color that wouldn't be accurate, I wouldn't have done it. How things look in the light is usually more important than how they look in the dark, and it's obvious what Funko's priorities were here. So did it pay off? Well, let's find out. Okay, wow, these two actually glow quite well. Obviously Virtua Freddy glows way better, but I think that was to be expected. He looks really cool, and even compared to the glowing mystery minis, which are the best glowing merch I've reviewed so far, he's just as good. As for Foxy, the red actually looks really neat glowing, and it's a nice contrast compared to most glowing figures that are greenish. The strange color choices that were made with him are now popping out, and I still don't understand what made the designers pick those pieces to have glow. I mean, the holes and the inner parts of his legs glowing? So it almost looked like they had wanted to make his insides glow like Jacko Chica or something. But no, his upper body is glowing too. So it's sort of like they just did whatever the heck they wanted to do without it making much sense. Personally, I would have just made all of his outer body glow, because there isn't enough holes in him to make it pop much the other way. So really, I think Glow Foxy is the worst of all the figures. He's not unique, he's colored weirdly, and he doesn't even glow that amazingly either. All the other figures are quite good in my opinion. I rather like them. Some stand out as greater, but only one of them is actually bad enough for me to not want to include. So what do you guys think about these? Do you want Funko to make more, or are you just gonna avoid them at all costs? Personally, if I wasn't a reviewer, I probably would have just stuck with the action figures. But I mean, those do get pricey, so having a cheaper option out there is pretty cool. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll have an awesome Friday. Bye!